There we are. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Behind the Basket, your Thursday night NBA basketball talk show. That's my first time seeing that intro.
It's
That was
cool,
awesome.
right?
It's awesome. The countdown, the music, we're definitely up in our production here. It's just getting good stuff at the Game Changer Sports Network. Let's get right into it with some breaking news from just a couple hours ago. Something we weren't planning on talking about, but we should
Hmm.
probably just get out of the way is Rockets general manager Daryl Morey. It was announced that he was stepping down from the organization after 13 years as the Rockets general manager. They have already promoted Raphael Stone, I believe is his name,
Hmm.
internally from the Rockets organization. He served a vice president role in a number of different legal and operational things. So, kind of an unknown there. Just a little bit of fun facts about Daryl Morey. A lot of people following the NBA know that he's kind of the mastermind behind the Rockets
Literal genius.
live by the three, die by the three kind of statistical thing, and he gets a lot of flack for that. But Daryl Morey, in his 13 years as general manager, in those 13 years, the Rockets have the second best regular season record in the NBA. And during those 13 years, the Rockets made 77 trades. Only the Philadelphia 76ers made more trades. They made 78. And since the Rockets acquired James Harden from the Oklahoma City Thunder, every single team in the NBA has missed the playoffs except for the Rockets. So, our resident Houston superfan, how do you feel about the Daryl Morey situation going on?
Well, let's just say I am in shambles. Okay. We have lost our head coach, we have lost our general manager, and I just honestly don't know what's going to happen this season. Like every season I talk all kinds of crap. I'm like, they're going to win, like this.
Mm-hmm.
But what are they going to do? I have no idea. And I'm not so sure. I mean, I know that the Rockets are saying that, or there's rumors that they have interest in Joel Embiid,
Mm-hmm.
but how are they going to make that happen? Who are they going to trade? And how are the trades going to be now that it's not Morey doing it? I don't know. I'm not okay with it.
It's Morey definitely. I think he deserves more credit than he gets
Hmm.
sometimes. The Houston Rockets have been a very good team for the past decade.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people, they just like to make fun of the play style. I think it's safe to say, though, that with letting go of D'Antoni and Morey, that the Rockets are taking a new direction. It'll just be
Hmm.
interesting to see what that direction is. As of right now, there's not really a lot of rumors of trading anyone. I don't think you
Not,
trade James Harden because
no,
he's still an MVP candidate.
I don't know.
But you wonder if they're going to try to trade Russell Westbrook. He's kind of their only trade asset right now. They gave up a lot of picks to get him.
Hmm.
Maybe they try to get more picks back, or maybe they try to flip him for a player who's a little less one dimensional than Russell Westbrook can be on the court. Maybe I don't know if the Sixers would be interested in making a trade there,
Hmm.
or just flipping him for picks and depth and just letting Harden run the show with some deeper supporting cast around him.
I mean, I think that it's worth keeping him for another year. Oh my God, the cat is already here today. I think it's worth keeping him for another year because in that sweet spot, like right before he got hurt in the bubble and
Mhm,
the few games when they first went to small ball when they got rid of Clint Capella,
mhm.
like they really did have a chemistry, but they they do actually have quite a few trade options in Austin Rivers, Jeff Green, Daniel House. There's a couple people that are going into free agency,
Mhm.
but uh, I don't know. I think that he's likely to be traded too. I don't think that. I don't know. I don't know. There's two. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, the Daryl Morey decision was made just today, so there's still a
Hmm.
lot of time before other decisions have to be made. The one thing that I think might be appealing for people interested in the Russell Westbrook trade market is that this free agency class isn't exactly stacked with talent,
Hmm.
because we've already caught wind that Anthony Davis plans to
Right.
re-sign with the Lakers, and he's kind of the only
The
like
biggest name.
superstar name on the
Right.
list this year. It's next off season where there are a
Hmm.
lot of big names. I can't remember what they are, but I think it's like
LeBron.
LeBron, Klay Thompson,
Yeah.
some of those other guys. But if you want to get a superstar caliber player, you're going to have to trade for him for this season if you want to make a title run in 2021. So that I could see swaying some teams to consider trading for Russell Westbrook now
Right.
or
As much
waiting to try their luck in free agency next season.
I think it's going to depend a lot on who they pick for their coach. Is it going to be like an offensive heavy team? Like how Mike D'Antoni, that's all he's about is offense. Um, so the choices that they have, because well, I'm sure we'll get into it, but Ty Lue signing a contract with the Clippers. So he
Yes.
was actually asked back for a second interview and declined. So the only other person that they have invited back for a second interview is Jeff Van Gundy. But there's a lot of rumors in the Houston like areas that John Lucas is a front runner.
Hmm.
So, but and the Jeff Van Gundy, I know that when I was first reading about that, he was Maury's top pick. So I don't know if maybe that had something to do with it too.
Hmm.
I know that Tillman Fertitta, the owner, was interviewing people on his own, like, but not with Maury. So I don't know.
Interesting.
I'm definitely thinking it has something to do with Tillman Fertitta though, Maury's exit, just because of the way Mike D'Antoni left, and then with Maury now just kind of out of nowhere, it feels like it might be because of him.
I wouldn't doubt it. And there's still a lot of teams. I think we have a list here of teams that still need a coach.
Mm.
Maybe I lost it, but the Thunder still need a coach.
Pacers
The
too, right?
Pacers need a coach. New Orleans needs a coach. They're starting to get full, but there's still some positions open. Clippers, they just got Ty Lue. We'll touch on that in a second. I don't think Jeff Van Gundy is a terrible candidate for some of these teams. He's got coaching experience.
Mm-hmm.
He took over USA basketball responsibilities when Greg Popovich was no longer interested or stepped down. So he definitely has some experience with coaching NBA level talent. He's been a
Mm-hmm.
very successful analyst for NBA games alongside Mark Jackson, who we haven't really heard about, but he's another potential candidate that people can look at. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets one of those last spots
Mm-hmm.
or if other spots open up. At this point, I feel like if you're going to fire your coach, you would have done it already,
Yeah,
because most teams have kind of been in their off season for
already
quite some time.
that's
And the recent team to enter, the Lakers, they're not going to change anything because they just
no.
won. And then the Heat, Eric Spoelstra has been a phenomenal coach. So you're going to want to hang on to him for as long as possible. So we'll go into the Clippers. Ty Lue, he signed a 5-year deal with the Clippers, which is a pretty large deal.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches' contracts, I don't know if they really work the same as players, but there's a lot of unknown with the Clippers because they don't have any picks. And if they lose Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, it's going to be a rough ride for them. So how do you feel about the Ty Lue pick for their coach?
Okay, well, for the Ty Lue part, I have two different comments to this. For the Ty Lue part, I think it makes sense for him. He's been the assistant there
Mm-hmm.
for a while, and he knows them. He's worked with them. I think it's a good move for him and good move for the Clippers. Um, Kawhi and Paul George, I know nothing to back this up other than just a feeling, but I feel like they might try and do something with Paul George.
Mm.
Um, a lot of the teams tried out these dynamic duos and stuff this year, and some of them worked really well. And the Clippers, I mean, they worked good together, but like I said, it's nothing more than just I feel like they're going to try and move him.
Mhm.
I think that yeah, I don't know. That's all I got on that.
I saw a couple. I would say they're probably fan rumors at this point. There was a lot of playoff P jokes once again. You
Yeah.
know, Paul George has had recent troubles with performing in the playoffs. He had some more success, not just because the Clippers made it past the first round, but he had some very good games, which you couldn't
Mhm.
say about his time in Oklahoma City, where most of his games were just mediocre at best. So I understand why people would be like, oh, well, you want to trade him. And I think it'll depend on what they can get from him. And I think above all, the Clippers need to keep Kawhi happy because I think their number one priority is when Kawhi enters free agency, which is going to happen soon because he signed, I think, just a 2-year deal,
Mhm.
a 2-year with a player option. So that would mean he's a free agency next year. And if he doesn't opt into his player option, they could lose him. So I think if Kawhi Leonard wants Paul George to play with him, you keep Paul George. If Kawhi Leonard wants to try something else,
That's
you got to listen to him because
right.
that's your franchise guy. You want to keep him around for as long as possible.
I feel like we both kind of messed up tonight. We didn't even acknowledge the fact that basketball is over and the
Uh,
Lakers won the championship.
yeah, well, I mean, you
It
and I both
happened.
know how we feel about the Lakers.
Yeah,
So.
we definitely weren't hoping for this, but I mean it's worth mentioning. The Lakers are the 2020 NBA champions. If anybody missed that, and we had a question: who was the best Laker of all time? And I'll answer at the end, but y'all know I don't think it's LeBron. Just saying. But yeah, they ended up closing it out, what, in 6 games, right?
Yep, 6 games, which is pretty impressive from the Heat still, especially with the injuries that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we also didn't have a question of the week, so we'll have it be who do you think's the best Laker of all time?
I just said that.
Yeah.
You missed it.
Did I?
Yeah.
I know you said we had that question, but I'm just stating it now for the audience. We're asking you guys to comment on that. I mean, LeBron will definitely be in greatest of all time discussions, but his tenure with the Lakers is way too short.
Yeah.
Winning a championship with any team, it's especially as the leader, it's definitely going to boost your status. But he's going to have to do a lot more before he's considered a better Laker than Kobe, who won all his 5 championships with the Lakers.
Yes.
Magic Johnson. Hello, Nick. Thanks for joining the show. You got Kareem and Shaq.
Mm-hmm.
Even guys like, they're not the kind of caliber of players LeBron, but like a James Worthy. You've got Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain.
Mm-hmm.
The Lakers have one of the most storied histories. So I think LeBron as a Laker ranks well behind people that he ranks for all time,
Agreed. Very much.
So I do have
oh, okay, go ahead.
so the Lakers and the Celtics are now tied with the most titles in NBA history. They both have 17. 2 things about that. I mean, we could go through every single Lakers championship, but there's so many on this list. The one thing that kind of bothers me is 5 of their championships came from the Minneapolis Lakers before they relocated to Los Angeles. They were led by George Mikan, who I talked about a couple weeks ago, one of the guys I think who's very underrated. And they have not retired Mikan's jersey, and I think that is a crime, that they will claim his titles but not retire his jersey. Right now it's an honored Minneapolis Lakers jersey, but if they're going to claim
that's a really
those
good
titles, they should claim him as a full Laker, and that number 99 should be in the rafters.
I think we need to write Jeannie Buss a letter about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
That really is messed up. I didn't know that they didn't claim. I mean, like I knew that you said his jersey wasn't retired, but I didn't know that they were claiming those titles still.
They do, and that's why it's 17-17, because otherwise it'd be 12, because those five, since they're still the Lakers and they relocated from Minneapolis, they kind of inherit that history kind of in a way that the Supersonics history is part of Oklahoma City Thunder history.
Yeah.
I think they should be separate personally, because the Sonics,
The different team.
yeah, they completely rebranded, whereas the Lakers, they just kind of moved cities.
Yeah.
That would be like if the Timberwolves went to Seattle, but they were still called the Timberwolves. Okay, you can keep Timberwolves history. But if they become the Supersonics, Timberwolves history just kind of gets locked down and you regain your
Right.
Supersonics history. That's my 2 cents. If
I
the
agree.
Lakers really want to claim that dynasty title next to Boston, you got to give Mike Hann his credit.
Yeah, for sure. In that series, we there were a couple people from the Heat that really stood out, and I know one of them was your rookie pick, Tyler Hero, right? He did great. I mean, just the entire from the bubble on. But my favorite was Duncan Robinson. Like when they first started in the bubble, he had he was the best 3-point shooter, and it nobody really knew that, I guess, because nobody knew who he was, in comparison to all the other stars there.
Right.
But I wrote it down because it was just kind of a cool fact to me. In Game 5, he hit 7 threes, and the only people to have made more than that in a finals game are Steph Curry and Ray Allen. And it's just like, wow, and they're so young, that I think Miami is going to be a pretty big deal still next year.
Absolutely. I think Duncan Robinson is actually older than you'd expect from a second-year player. Yeah, I think he's like 24 or 25. I'll have to double check that right now. And I'm on my phone, so my hands look gigantic when I'm looking things up. But he's still, as far as in the league, that's still fairly young.
Yeah.
He's 26.
So he went undrafted, I'm assuming, right?
I believe he did. He went undrafted. He played in 15 games last season. Only averaged a little over 10 minutes a game, 3.3 points a game. So he didn't really get a lot of play. It's this season, that he found a lot of use. The Heat kind of have a new identity. So, he coming into the league at age 25, as he was last year, getting his role when he's 26, he doesn't have a whole lot of time to become like the greatest shooter of all time, but he has plenty of years to make a big impact. Shooters last a lot longer than dunkers because they're not putting that wear and tear on their body. Look at guys like Kyle Korver, who are still in the league. So, he could push, another good 10 seasons if he takes care of himself and avoids injury. I was a little worried about Duncan Robinson coming in because he pretty much, while he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league right now, that's kind of all that he can do. He doesn't have really any ball handling. He doesn't do any dribble drives. His defense, I was actually very pleasantly surprised by his defense in the finals. And I think that's that Miami Heat culture. But that was a weak point of his during the regular season. But even with those liabilities, a guy like Duncan Robinson is so valuable in today's NBA, where he can stretch the floor and do it as well as he can. He was shooting like 40-something% from three. The NBA average for the regular season was 35%. So if you're shooting above that, especially like almost 10% above that, you're a phenomenal shooter.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I have another little random tidbit, but this has nothing to do with either of these teams. It's about the Raptors.
Okay.
Serge Ibaka, he deleted all of the Raptor stuff off of his Twitter bio. All gone. So I wonder what he's planning. He's
now,
I guess, testing free agency for sure.
Yes, I was going to ask. He's on that free agency list we went through last week, correct?
I'd love to see him come back to the Rockets.
He's a player that would fit in a lot of places. He's on the tail end of his career. You know, he's on the wrong side of 30, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But he's been phenomenal for the Raptors. Both starting and off the bench, he's still a very capable defender. He's worked on his three-point shot so he can stretch the floor, but he's still very physical on the inside. So he's kind of a do-it-all power forward. So he would really fit if Houston still wants to do the small ball. Serge Ibaka would be the perfect center for Houston Rockets small ball. But I don't see any team with the space in such a weak free agency class. I think he's one of the most valuable free agents.
Probably so. Yeah.
So it will be interesting. It's interesting that he plans on leaving Toronto. I wonder what Toronto's plans are as far as the future, because Fred VanVleet is also a free agent. Losing those two, along with losing Marc Gasol already, is huge, and that's really going to hurt Toronto.
So if that's the case, then they'll be one of the teams that might rebuild. I think that the Rockets might be a team that rebuilds. I hope not, because I love all of the players on the team, but I think that there's a chance they could. I had a list somewhere of teams that I thought might, but I don't know where that list is now.
Well, while you look for it, just talking about the Raptors, they definitely might rebuild, because if they lose, they've already lost Marc Gasol. He's decided he's going to go play overseas.
Right.
And then if you lose Fred VanVleet and Serge Ibaka, that's three starting caliber guys that they had on the Raptors. Now, the Raptors were very deep, but none of their other players really moved the needle like those guys did. So at that point, do you try to trade Kyle Lowry while he still has some value, because he's still a great player? And I assume they build around Pascal Siakam. So what do you do at that point?
They have and stuff.
I don't know. I don't remember how much they traded to get Kawhi Leonard, because that was a trade that they made. They didn't pick him up in free agency, so that definitely cost them. If they don't have any picks in the near future, you don't go into full rebuild, because there's no point. But losing that many guys, unless they're able to pick up like Montrezl Harrell and some of these other guys in free agencies to replace the players they're losing, they're kind of at a crossroads, because I don't think they're going to be able to compete with the Bucks and the Celtics and even the Heat while losing these guys.
All about the Bucks. I forgot they were.
Yeah, the Bucks lose way too early, and you forget they even exist.
Yeah, completely forgot about them. I'm over here thinking Miami, but there's the Bucks too. So I mean, like the East is actually, the West was really heavy with talent this year,
right?
But the East had some really good teams. Like Boston was really good. The Raptors were really good. I think everybody kind of underestimated that whole side of the thing, because a lot of those teams were, for me as like a Rockets fan, I was like, oh no, we're going against Boston tonight, or I mean, like a lot of them had great teams this year. It's gonna be interesting to see when free agency starts and when the trades start happening and everything, which like side it tips to,
Yeah.
Which free agency starts December 1st.
December 1st. That's good to know.
Supposedly, they think it's going to start.
If they don't bump it back again.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, in years past, there's been kind of a LeBron effect, where a lot of top free agents would move from the East to the West, so that they wouldn't have to go through LeBron in the East, because he was on this ridiculous final streak. None of the Eastern teams could compete with him, and frankly, none of them just had enough talent. So, like, if you're a super good player on an East team, these Eastern teams were just so weak from top to bottom that you could have had, like, Kevin Durant on one of those teams, and he would have been like, nah, I don't know if I can do this, because the East has just been so terrible. But I think this is the best the East has been in a long time. There's still a lot more top heavy than the Western Conference is, but the Miami Heat were the 5 seed and made the finals. The Celtics, Raptors, and Bucks all had finals aspirations that were warranted. The 76ers, underperformed, but they're still a good team with Embiid and Simmons or top talent. The Brooklyn Nets are going to have Kyrie and KD next year.
Well, I think the main thing that stuck out to me about it was that the teams that were so good were balanced teams. You know,
Yes.
where you don't have LeBron and KD, or I mean
Mhm.
AD, KD, and you don't have, like Westbrook and Harden on. I mean, obviously it worked for LeBron and AD,
Right.
but for a lot of teams, it didn't. And the ones that came out strong out of the East were definitely just like the Heat, a balanced team.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Jimmy Butler was the leader, but everybody contributed well,
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. I think that that's something to take into consideration for next season for sure. And when we're, making our guesses about how the season's going to go,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have to look at the players that maybe aren't such big names.
Yeah, if you look out west, that's kind of where a lot of the superstar duos are that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron and AD, the champions of this year.
Mm-hmm.
Russell Westbrook and James Harden,
Kawhi
Luka
and
Doncic
PG.
and Kristaps Porzingis, Kawhi and PG. All the duos kind of seem to be in the West. In the East, you've got Kyrie and KD, but they were both hurt; they didn't really play.
Right.
And then maybe
Steph and Clay didn't play too,
yeah, I
but they were the
mean
West.
that'll be interesting to see them next year. And I think the perfect example of how interesting the East is the Indiana Pacers.
Mm-hmm.
They were the 4th seed in the East, and I don't think a lot of people can really name a lot of the players from the Indiana Pacers. They have a very good team, but they're just super balanced. Now, the Miami Heat handled them no problem. I'm pretty
Right.
sure they swept them, but the
Mm-hmm.
Heat also beat the Bucks and took the Lakers to 6 while
Right.
battling injuries.
They go undefeated until like well into the second round, or
Yeah, they went like 13-2 or 13-3 in all of their Eastern Conference games or something wild like that.
easy.
They only lost a few games. They
Mm-hmm.
swept the Pacers. They only lost 1 or 2 to the Bucks, and then they lost. I think they went to 7 with the Celtics actually, but they had a really good start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I can definitely name somebody from the Pacers. That is TJ Warren.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see next year. Just if he's going to be the kind of guy who only uh, I don't want to say like James Harden because there's no guy like James Harden, but scores has these crazy high end 20-point nights and then randomly often has 50 plus points.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that it was more than just a bubble effect with him and with Jamal Murray too.
I agree. It'll be fun to see some players step up their game like they did. Donovan Mitchell is another one who
Mm-hmm.
definitely outperformed expectations in the bubble.
Yeah.
And a part of it, is it the bubble effect without the pressure of the fans and the travel? Is that why they were able to do so well? Were they more focused because they weren't, out in the world getting distracted by whatever NBA players get distracted by? It'll be interesting to see because what?
Strip clubs.
I mean, yeah, Harden knows as well as any of them.
For
But
sure.
TJ Warren, if he plays even half of how he did in the bubble seeding games, he could be an all-star next season.
Yeah.
And Jamal Murray, you wouldn't believe it given his playoff performance, but he hasn't been an all-star either. So
Right.
both those guys, they could definitely make all-star bids if they up their game like they proved that they have in them in the
Mm-hmm.
Orlando bubble. It's just going to be interesting to see if they're able to deliver.
Well, and that's what I liked about Jamal Murray was that, with TJ Warren, like I said, it was a couple of 20 plus point games. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a 50 plus points. 50. He was the first person to get to 50 in the bubble.
Mm-hmm. And he averaged like 40.
Yeah. Yeah. But for the most most part, he stayed around like 27-ish or something. That was like where most of his nights were. But Jamal Murray was consistently just going off. And who does he have around him? He's got Jokic.
Jokic is his big man.
Man. I can't figure out. So he's got him. Who are the other? Michael Porter Jr.
Paul Millsap, Jeremy Grant.
Right. I feel like I've completely forgotten all about these teams. I've been so focused on the Heat and the Lakers and how much I hate the Lakers. And
There's definitely some recency bias when you're talking about basketball. Well, we were talking before the show about teams we might think are underrated, and believe it or not, I still think that the Nuggets are a little underrated.
I think that they're underrated every year.
It's interesting because they made it to, well, they almost made it to the Western Conference Finals last year. They went to 7 games with the Trailblazers, who went to the conference finals. And then they came back from a 3-1 deficit twice this postseason.
Right.
I mean, they as good of a team as they are, maybe they shouldn't have been down 3-1. But the fact that they were able to rally twice and it's just
the talent
amazing. The talent is there. And it's just, we're going to have to see what they do to take it to the next level. Jamal Murray is going to have to play like Orlando Jamal Murray for them to be a contender. Jokic, I think, is the best center in the league. Yeah. And I think they need a little bit of help because I think Paul Millsap's a free agent. They might lose him. They might re-sign him.
What do they need to make them a contender, a real contender?
I can't name a single player off of their bench. Which to me, like, I feel like I kind of know a lot of the players in the league. Yeah. I don't know any of their bench players. I think they have a guy named Monte Morris, and he might be a point guard, and I'm not entirely convinced that I know that. Michael Porter Jr., I think, comes off the bench, but he did really well in the bubble. So I think they might need some more depth. And maybe to trade for another, there's been trade rumors that they might get someone like Drew Holiday. If they have a little extra help, someone who can take the load off of Murray and Jokic come crunch time, I think they're going to be really dangerous.
I really do think that people just, I don't know if it's because they are pretty balanced in comparison to the West, the other teams.
Absolutely.
So, they just kind of quietly go under the radar while everybody's talking about Westbrook and Harden doing this and Kawhi did this and, but they could have beat the Lakers. They did beat the Lakers. One? Did they win 2? Or?
I can't remember. I felt like the series got over very quickly.
I know. I don't even remember. I swear. I feel like I lived and breathed basketball during the bubble. And then it got to finals and I was watching the games, but I wasn't. My heart wasn't in it.
It feels so long ago. And I just remember thinking that the Nuggets weren't keeping up with the Lakers as much as they should have.
Yeah.
Something interesting, I'm just looking at some regular season numbers from last season. Another reason why I think Denver might have gone below the radar, they only had 2 more wins than the Rockets and the Thunder, which is marginally better. But their point differential was only barely better than the Thunder and almost a point lower than the Rockets and a lot lower than the Dallas Mavericks. So they were winning games, but they were never really blowing teams out like the Clippers and the Lakers and the Bucks were, where they're getting big wins. Denver was kind of just comfortably getting by to the tune of 46 wins.
I wonder what Jamal Murray was averaging during regular season.
I will look that up for you right now. It's surprisingly like mellow compared to what, if people are learning about Jamal Murray in the bubble, where he averaged like 35 points in the first series against Utah. And then you look at this, he averaged 18.5 points in the regular season.
So he really made a difference for them then.
He doubled his offensive output in that series with the Utah Jazz, not just in points, but in assists as well. He was just shy of 5 assists in the regular season, and I think he was doing at least 7 against the Utah Jazz. He just turned it on, and he shot 45%, 34% from 3, and he was like above 50 and 40 in the bubble. He was just phenomenal.
I
And
totally
if
Utah
he
Jazz
can
were a team.
say that again,
I totally forgot the Utah Jazz were a team. I forgot all
that they're another underrated team. People talk about good teams in the West, and the Jazz are always there. But again, like, it's Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. That's not really your superstar duo.
I think Rudy is a free agent this season. It might be the next season, because remember last week I looked up next year's free agency by accident, and once I read it, it's stuck. So I don't know.
I think he's next season because he would definitely be at the top of a lot of people's list,
Okay.
especially in such a weak free agency class. Rudy Gobert, he's a traditional big man, which there's not a whole lot of, but his defense alone will make him very valuable to anyone who wants him.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it had to have been next year. There were. You're right. It's heavy next season.
Oh yeah,
bunch of people. I'm ready for them to start doing something already, especially now that my team's in just disarray. I want to know what's happening and what's gonna happen. I hate the unknown.
Yeah, and I feel like this is going to be a very mellow free agency compared to how we've been kind of spoiled in the past couple of years with the craziness. Partially because there's not a lot of huge names, and I think we can already guess like who they're going to go to. We have championship favorite teams who have needs that these players can fill, and they're probably going to have the best success there. It's either that or some of these players are going to get extremely overpaid by like the Knicks or the Hawks or something like that just because they want a lot of money.
Well, so I kind of looked at the last little like power rankings. I looked at the last 10 or so of them, and I have little notes on each team just to kind of. So like the Knicks, they've got the new coach, Tom. How do you say it? Thibodeau?
Thibodeau or something.
Thibodeau? I don't know how you say it.
Spelled TH.
Yeah.
Whoop.
He and they have a basically clear cap sheet. Like they've got space to do something. Are they going to? Are they going to make any good picks? I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see what Thibodeau does with them. But I can't say that I expect them to win the championship or anything or make
not at all. The problem with the Knicks is that they wanted to get Kyrie and KD, and then they decided to go to Brooklyn. And that was kind of their entire plan. And then they just...
Didn't they? Was this a whole thing?
Huh?
They tanked for it. It was a whole thing. I remember when...
They set themselves up. They traded Porzingis away.
Yeah.
And they opened up all this cap space, and they're like, we're going to sign 2 huge free agents. We're New York. We're the Knicks, and then nobody went. And then they're just like...
Was a bit of a different thing, though. Porzingis was accused of rape by a girl, and I don't know the whole details of it. Obviously, he's free, so, I don't know. But they couldn't play him for a while because of all the legal drama around it. And then I think he got injured, too, after that. And then... they finally just had to like get rid of his contract because he had been there for, I want to say like a year and hadn't got to play or anything. And so they sent him over to Dallas or whatever. But I remember going to a game, and I guess it was a Knicks game. I don't remember if it was, it had to have been, but I was at a Rockets game, and everybody was yelling, tank, 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 like throughout the whole game. That was that season. That was like 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, the Knicks are sad. I think that when Porzingis was traded to Dallas, I don't think he played the season he was traded. He was traded halfway through the season, right before the deadline, if I remember correctly, and he was still injured. And I think he wanted out. The Knicks management has been so terrible, and I don't think he was happy with how they were treating him with his injury, with whatever drama was going on. And I think that's why they missed out on free agents. Until the ownership of the New York Knicks changes, I don't know if they're really going to see any success,
Yeah.
and if they throw big money at free agents this year, they're going to miss out on all the big free agents next year. The
Right.
only thing I see going for the Knicks is if they have all this money in a prime location and there are too many good free agents, then there are teams with the money to pay for them.
True.
That's the only upside I give to the Knicks, because other teams, like if Atlanta fills up their cap space, if the Thunder decide to rebuild and they start tanking, so they don't want to get somebody, maybe they do, who knows.
Mhm.
The Knicks, above anything else, they'll have money if they play their cards right, and that might play into their favor.
Hmm. I had something I was gonna say, and then as soon as I took a breath to say it, it flew out of my head. But oh, I was gonna say that it makes me very nervous to see that that's what a bad general manager can do to a team.
Yeah.
Now, I've been spoiled with Daryl Morey. I hope that this Stone guy knows what he's doing.
It'll be interesting to see if someone decides to drop their general manager in favor of Morey. He definitely has a good track record. If he's still interested in being a general manager, I wonder if he can talk his way into a team. He could be very valuable to one of these lower Eastern Conference teams that hasn't sniffed the playoffs for the past decade. Maybe Daryl
Well,
Morey can help turn it around.
I know a Texas team that just lost their general manager,
Besides the Rockets?
the Houston Texans.
Okay. I don't really know my football, but
Yeah, they just
it'll be
fired
interesting.
their general manager and head coach, Bill O'Brien. But
Yeah.
I don't think I think he said he wanted to pursue different areas of interest, which I mean, that could be football, but also his two college age kids were they're taking a year off because of COVID and everything from college. So he wanted to spend some time with them too. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, I still think it's Tillman related, but maybe he'll take the year off. But I really hope that, I don't know. I hope this next season goes good. I'm nervous about it. Just as I was on the phone with my dad when I got the ESPN notification, and I cussed. I think I said, "What the?" Because like that was never crossed my mind that was going to be what happened.
Yeah, that definitely threw me for a loop as well. I'm always surprised generally when there's an unexpected stepping down like that. There's some coaches that you can kind of tell, like, oh, they're
Mm-hmm.
probably going to get fired soon.
Oh yeah.
But there's just no way for us to know what's going on internally with these
Mm-hmm.
teams. So when something like that happens, it's just like, wow.
And the
And then you just
Rockets,
gotta go with it.
that's one thing that I really love about this team is how private they are. Like when James Harden and Westbrook got COVID, we didn't know till they were almost recovered.
Mhm.
And just a lot of stuff like that. You don't usually hear stuff from inside the locker room. Like the Chris Paul and James Harden drama, whatever that was, they both denied it. And they still do deny it.
Mhm.
So I think that's very cool that they aren't one of those, like, because I lost respect for LeBron last year when he was basically making trades for the team, and being very vocal about it. And I just thought that it's not good for like the team to be like that. But
Yeah, keeping the drama to the minimum, definitely. It's nice as a fan, and I'm sure players like it as well if they know they're going to go to a team and there's not going to be all this noise around them and stuff. But it,
yeah.
it depends on so many factors. But there are some teams that have been very good at that. I'm looking at some of our notes, and I'm excited for this question that you had typed up, which was, what was your favorite NBA bubble story?
Do you have one? I have one.
I think I have one. There's probably some things about the bubble I might have forgotten, but I do have one.
Okay, you tell yours first.
All right. I was shocked to see the Phoenix Suns go undefeated in the bubble, 8-0.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that's my favorite is I like Devin Booker as a player. I think
Mhm.
he's really fun to watch. I think he's really talented. And he's been kind of suffering on a mediocre Phoenix Suns team for his
Yeah.
entire career. Now, it's unknown if he's going to get traded because I think the Phoenix Suns would be really dumb to trade him. But there's rumors that the Minnesota Timberwolves are planning on trading the number one overall pick in the draft to pair another star with Karl Anthony Towns and possibly D'Angelo Russell if they can keep him. And those three guys are all friends. They've made it known that they want to play with each other at some point in their careers. And right now in their prime would be the best. So it'd be interesting to see if he gets traded to the Wolves. But regardless, seeing the Suns, even though they didn't end up making the playoffs, have that success was
Yeah.
super fun for me because every
Mhm.
game it was like, are they going to pull it off again? Are they going to stay undefeated? How many points is Devin Booker going to put up? You know, he was
And they're
doing
the
30
only
a night.
team that can say that they were completely undefeated in the bubble. I think that's pretty cool. Even though
Yeah.
they're the one team like towards the end that got sent home.
Yeah,
They,
unfortunate, but they had a lot of ground to cover
yeah.
because they were very behind. And I'm excited to see if maybe they found something that worked and if they
Mhm.
can come into next season, maybe retool a little bit. I don't really know their financial and roster situations there. And if Booker's able to take the next step and be a full all-star instead of an injury replacement, and just maybe we'll see Phoenix in the playoffs for the first time in who knows how long.
I hope so. That's actually, we had talked about underrated teams and everything. When I was getting all my notes ready for the show, that's my number one pick for not underrated, but like basically teams to watch next season that,
Mhm.
like you said earlier, would be more surprising. I definitely think that them and maybe the Hawks.
I
Um,
agree.
Real quick, my bubble story, and then I'll come back to the Hawks. My bubble story, I told it already on the show, but I just love that Jimmy Butler was selling coffee out of his hotel room. I saw a meme that who was it that hit him from the Lakers? Not hit him, but like was it Dwight Howard?
Oh, I don't remember. It was a very gritty series. There was a lot of
Yeah, well
bouncing around.
yeah, it was Dwight Howard. Okay, so there was a picture of them two like, in each other's faces and stuff, and it was Dwight saying, "Your coffee's overpriced." I don't know why, but it cracked me up, and that is my favorite story for sure.
That
But
is cool. The big face coffee.
yeah, big face coffee, and it didn't matter if you got a small or a large; it was still $20. Like, it's just ridiculous, but hilarious. So the Hawks, when we talked about them a while back, we were talking about how they're pretty good offensively. They've got Trae Young, who we're both fans of. I think that what's going to make a difference this year is that they have Clint Capella too. And I personally know how he, like I watched him very closely because he was on the Rockets. Right before they traded him, I want to say that he broke Dennis Rodman's record for plays in a game. And I mean, not plays, for blocks in a game. He had like he broke some kind of record. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Just to interject, I think it was like streak of 20 rebound games or something
Yeah,
like that.
it was
I
something
want to
crazy.
say that's what it was.
And I mean, he's not the world's best defensive player or anything, but he's solid and he's 7 feet. I mean, like he's a good player to have on your side. So I think that that's going to be, we didn't get to see them play or anything. They traded him, and then he was hurt. He had a heel contusion, I want to say.
Something like that, or plantar fasciitis, something
Yeah,
along those lines.
something with his foot, and so he sat, and then obviously the season stopped in April and everything, or March, whenever it was, and so we didn't get to see that dynamic. But I think that's going to work well together. He worked really well with like on the pick and roll with Harden. So, I mean, Trae Young is similar style to Harden. I think it's fair to say that they're both super strong 3-point shooters,
Mhm.
and I think that they have a similar style. So I think that they'll work good together.
Yeah, I think the Hawks definitely will benefit from the rebounding. Their starting center, I think, was Alex Len, who's just kind of I think he'd be a really good backup center for a team, but I don't think he's quite starting caliber in the league right now. So
Mm-hmm.
that rebounding, even if he's not like the most fantastic defender, just his rebounding prowess will be able to get him a lot of extra possessions. It'll cut down on some of the offensive rebound putbacks that teams can get on the Hawks. And more than anything, I 100% agree with. I think he's going to have really good chemistry with Trae Young, being able
Mm-hmm.
to run the pick and roll, because Trae Young has a very similar skill set to Harden. He doesn't do as many ISO step back threes, but being able to run the pick and roll like Harden does, to be
Right.
able to use that to get open for three, or to be able to drive for either a lob or for an open layup. That's all stuff that Harden did a lot with Capella, and he did it well. And
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that Trae Young is going to be able to do the same thing. The
Right.
question is, they have a lot of other young guys. Are they going to be able to step up as well? I think
Well,
that's going to
yeah,
be the difference
know
maker.
that the Hawks have all of the cap space in the world.
That
I mean,
too.
they got plenty of money to make some real moves. So that's why I think that they're just going to be someone that we want to keep our eyes on for
Mhm.
sure. Um, to be one of the maybe a playoff team for sure.
In the East, it's possible because the East it's top heavy. So I think
Mm-hmm.
if one team makes a really big jump, they'll be able to make it to the playoffs in the East. And this is another one of those kind of decision. I think it would be awesome if the Hawks were able to get like two guys in free agency this year, like Serge Ibaka, and I don't know who the guards are besides Fred VanVleet, but let's use him as an example. If they were
Mm-hmm.
able to get two good guys, that would be cool. Or maybe they keep trying to develop who they have and then wait for the really good free agency next season. That's the decision that general managers are just going to have to make, and
Yeah,
weigh the pros and cons of acting now or waiting it out one more season.
that's why it'd be so good if the Rockets still had Morey because he would know
Yeah.
what to do. Mm, the let's see. There was I have all of the other teams listed, but they're really not worth mentioning so much. It's not that they're not worth it, but they've got room to grow for sure. Like the Cavs, the Pistons, the Wizards. The Bulls have Billy Donovan now, who
That's the team that I'm most interested in. I have no faith in the Pistons. I don't think the Cavs are going to be that great. I like Colin Sexton, but unless he makes a huge jump,
right.
they've got an old Kevin Love and Andre Drummond, who's done a whole lot of nothing.
Darius Garland.
Darius Garland has potential as well, but they're kind of an Atlanta Hawks, really young, inexperienced
Right.
team that will be good if they can hit their ceiling. The Bulls, though, they have Kobe White, who I think is one of the better rookies from this draft class, and Zach LaVine, who's a borderline all-star, who, if he was on a better team, would have been an all-star. And they made a major coaching upgrade from whoever the terrible coach they had before. I can't even remember his name. He was just awful.
They also
Upgrading
have
from him to Billy Donovan is going to be so helpful, I believe.
they also have a big man that I don't fully remember what I read all about him, just that he was an offensive talent. Um, and I can't promise to pronounce his name right.
Lauri Markkanen?
What is it?
Is it Lauri Markkanen?
Lowry. I would say he's
Lowry,
Lori.
Lori?
That's
I
how you
don't
spell
really.
Lori in Texas. I don't,
He's
but
not even from the States, so I'm not quite sure. But could be
Lowry.
Mark Cannon for all I know.
Markinen. I don't know. That guy. Um, they said that he was an offensive talent.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I say maybe, since I don't know any of those players, maybe they make it towards like where the Suns are this time last season.
Maybe. The thing with Lowry or Lori, Markkanen, however you pronounce his name. He had a really good rookie year. He's like a 7-footer, I think, and he's got a really good 3-point shot. So he
Hmm.
fits the modern NBA where he's a big man, he can set screens, he can rebound, and he can shoot really well. But he regressed really badly in his second season. Now, I don't know how much of that's due to coaching. So it'll be interesting to see how he does with Billy Donovan. But he just got worse in his second year. He wasn't even like similar. He was just
Yeah.
bad. He definitely has a good ceiling, though. So I mean, if he shapes up, Levine does well. Chris Dunn is their point guard. He's one of the best defensive point guards in the league. They've got some decent tools. I don't think they're going to be a championship contender anytime soon,
Yeah.
but they have an interesting talent pool where I think they could maybe put together a 7th or 8th seed in the East.
Real quick, since we're starting to run low on time, did we have any answers to our question about who is the greatest Laker, Jake?
And who do you think is the greatest Laker, Elizabeth?
Kobe, hands down.
Kobe?
Yeah.
The interesting thing, like I really don't know how to answer this because Magic Johnson is so good, but I believe that the 80s were one of the most watered down decades in NBA history. It's just Lakers Boston the entire time. So like of course it's Magic and Bird, but at the same time Magic and Bird were so good. And then you have Kobe, and I don't think that he was carried by Shaq for any means, but I don't
Yeah.
think he has 5 rings without Shaq. The 2 rings he won without Shaq, that's Kobe. That is all Kobe there. I think what I would base my decision off of is at Kobe's jersey retirement ceremony, Magic Johnson called him the greatest Laker of all time. So I guess I would side with that. I think that would just be a fair assumption.
I think that's why like normally when it comes to finals and my team doesn't win, I just talk trash. But this year I kept my mouth shut and I tried to let the Lakers enjoy like all of the fans that we have on the network and everything. I tried to just let them enjoy it because I feel like this year was really a tribute to Kobe. I mean, they said that a bunch of times, but I really felt it this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because he was the greatest Laker.
Yeah, it is a pretty cool tribute, and even though neither of us are really LeBron fans or Lakers
Right.
fans, and the Lakers team definitely deserved it. I don't think they
Yeah.
cheated their way to the top or
No.
anything. They just played really good basketball. And
Mhm.
some of those guys I'm really happy to see win, like Alex Caruso, the meme god of the NBA. I was really happy to see Dwight Howard win a ring.
Yeah.
And Anthony Davis, I like his game. And to see the joy he had of being able to win a championship, you can't hate on that. These
Yeah.
guys work so hard to do that.
It was well,
And
for sure.
yeah, well deserved.
Hey, even though I'm still gonna talk crap in our little general chat, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'm still not a LeBron fan, but you got to give credit where credit's due, and I'll keep saying
exactly.
that. He deserved it. He deserves that Finals MVP, and I'll praise him for that championship. I think it was well earned.
I agree. We are out of time. So thank you everyone for joining us. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place.